When someone hears the expression spiritual attack, people almost always imagine something frightening, out of the ordinary, like in movies. And that's precisely where the biggest mistake. Most people believe that any sadness, bad thought, fear, or difficulty is already an attack from evil. Padre Pio warned that this confusion is dangerous because not everything that hurts comes from the enemy, and not everything that seems spiritual truly is. If we make a mistake right at the beginning, we'll make mistakes all the way back. We all experience temptations, bad days, tiredness, anxiety, and even moments of deep discouragement. This is part of human life. The problem begins when someone lumps everything together and starts seeing the devil in every problem. Padre Pio said that this weakens faith instead of strengthening it, because it removes personal responsibility and creates fear where discernment should exist. But then the question arises that no one seems to know the answer to properly. If not everything is a spiritual attack, how can we recognize when it truly is? This is where most people get lost. Some deny everything and say that nothing spiritual ever exists. Others exaggerate and think that everything is spiritual. Padre Pio followed a different path, the path of balance, observation, and truth. He taught that true spiritual warfare does not begin with shouting or strange manifestations, but with small signs ignored, which repeat themselves and form a pattern. The most common mistake is to look at a single symptom and draw hasty conclusions. Padre Pio did the opposite. He observed calmly, asked simple questions, and paid attention to details that almost no one notices. And that's precisely why so many people never understand what they're going through, because they look for answers in the wrong places or start from the wrong point. Before talking about a diabolical attack, it's necessary to learn to separate what is human, what is emotional, and what truly transcends the norm. And that was Padre Pio's first great teaching, a simple teaching, but one that changes everything when it is finally understood. Father Pio had a clear rule that surprised many people. He never believed in explanations that were too quick. When someone came to him saying, "Father, this is a spiritual attack," he neither confirmed nor denied it immediately. On the contrary, he slowed everything down. For him, true evil is not revealed in haste, but in time. And that's exactly where almost everyone goes wrong. Today, many people want immediate answers. Feel something strange? They immediately label it. Have a bad thought? They immediately get scared. Padre Pio taught that this impulse hinders discernment. He said that the enemy takes advantage of confusion and anxiety. Therefore, before any conclusion, he observed the person, their history, the changes in their behavior, their reactions over the days. No decisions made in the heat of the moment. He believed that real attacks leave marks. These things don't appear in isolation. Anyone can have a bad day, a difficult week too. But when something strange keeps coming back, always in the same way, at the same times, that's when an alarm bell rings. Padre Pio looked at events like someone putting together a puzzle, piece by piece, without skipping steps. Another important point, he was suspicious when everything seemed too simple. If someone explained everything with a single, quick cause, he would backtrack and ask more. He would ask about the person's faith, about family life, about losses, changes, conflicts. Sometimes the answer was hidden in something that seemed small, but that repeated itself silently. And here comes the most powerful lesson. Evil thrives on haste. Truth thrives on calm. Father Pio was not afraid to wait, because he knew that with time, what is false dissolves on its own. What is true, however, reveals itself clearly. Therefore, before pointing out a spiritual attack, he taught something simple, which even a child understands. Observe, wait, and don't draw conclusions prematurely. That's how discernment begins. Padre Pio taught something very simple, but that almost no one practices. A single sign says almost nothing. Everyone can have an off day, feel scared for no reason, or feel unwell from time to time. That's part of life. The problem starts when these signs don't go away. When they return, they repeat themselves and always appear at the same times. For Padre Pio, that's when the real warning sign was triggered. He said that the most common mistake is to look at a single episode and draw a quick conclusion. Nausea, pain, a bad thought. These can have 1,000 explanations. But when the same thing happens again, then again, and then again, always linked to prayer, faith, or spiritual situations, then it is no longer a coincidence. It's a pattern, and patterns tell stories. Father Pio observed as one watches an entire film, not just a scene. He perceived that in real cases, the symptoms followed a logic. They always appeared in the same contexts, with the same intensity and without a clear cause. It wasn't chaotic, it was repetitive, it was persistent, and that made all the difference. He explained it in a way any child could understand. If you stumble once, it was an accident. If you stumble in the same place every day, there's something there on the ground. Spiritual warfare works the same way. It's not the first stumble that reveals the problem, but the constant repetition. Therefore, Padre Pio was not impressed by isolated stories, but paid attention to the details that repeated themselves silently. He knew that evil likes to hide in routine, in what a person already considers normal. When someone said, "This always happens, it's always like this, always at the same time," he knew he needed to look more carefully. The main lesson from topic 3 is clear. Anything that returns without explanation deserves attention. The pattern is the language of truth, and whoever learns to observe it ceases to live in confusion and begins to understand what is really happening. Padre Pio perceived a very specific sign that almost always went unnoticed by people: the unease in the face of what is sacred. He noticed that some people were fine anywhere, but as soon as they entered a church, heard a prayer, or were near the Blessed Sacrament, something changed. It wasn't imagination or drama. The body reacted even before the person understood why. This unease didn't come as a sudden shock. Sometimes it started slowly, a tightness in the chest, a slight dizziness, a strange nausea. Other times it came on stronger, headaches, deep anguish, or even fainting. Padre Pio said that this didn't happen by chance, especially when the person wasn't even thinking about anything bad. The sacred atmosphere triggered the reaction. He explained it simply: that which comes from God brings peace, even when it corrects. If something within a person rebels against prayer, mass, or the name of Jesus, this needs to be observed carefully. It is not normal to feel physical or emotional rejection toward what is holy without a clear cause. Father Pio also warned that this did not automatically mean the person was possessed. That is another common misconception. For him, it was merely an important signal. It's a warning that something within that person was not in harmony with grace. And signs are not meant to frighten, they are meant to guide. He used to compare it to a wound. When you touch it, it hurts. The pain shows where the problem is. Similarly, when prayer bothers, it reveals where there is resistance. That is why Padre Pio calmly observed whether the discomfort always arose at the same spiritual moments. The main lesson from this point is clear and easy to understand. What comes from God does not harm the soul. If the body reacts with constant discomfort in the presence of the sacred, this should neither be ignored nor exaggerated. It must be discerned, and Padre Pio did this with attention, faith, and great prudence. Father Pio explained that in some cases, the body speaks loudest precisely when prayer begins. The person is fine, calm, conversing normally, but as soon as the rosary begins, a hymn is heard, or the name of Jesus is invoked, something suddenly changes. It's not acting, it's not willpower. The body reacts on its own, as if warning that something there doesn't want the presence of prayer. These reactions could be mild or intense. Some people felt sudden nausea, others became agitated with a racing heart, body aches, or an inexplicable anxiety. In more severe cases, dizziness, shortness of breath, or even fainting occurred. Padre Pio observed all of this very carefully because he knew that prayer reveals what is hidden. He said something easy to understand. When the light is turned on, the dirt appears. Prayer works like that light. It doesn't create the problem, it only shows what was already there. That's why Padre Pio wasn't startled by the reactions, but he didn't ignore them either. He wanted to know, does this always happen? Does it only happen when you pray? Does it happen with any prayer, or only with certain specific words? Another important detail, Padre Pio taught that God does not cause confusion. True prayer brings peace to the heart, even when it is intense. If the reaction is always one of rejection, discomfort, or unexplained physical suffering, this should not be treated as normal. It is a sign of resistance to grace. Resistance always has a cause. He also warned against creating fear. Not every reaction during prayer is something spiritually serious. Sometimes it's emotion, tiredness, or anxiety. Therefore, what mattered to him was repetition and context. If every time a person approaches God, their body reacts negatively, something needs to be observed with care and discernment. The lesson is simple, even for a child to understand. Prayer doesn't hurt, it heals. If something within a person is bothered whenever God is invoked, the problem is not prayer, it is what the prayer is revealing. Padre Pio paid close attention to a sign that was frightening, but at the same time revealed a great deal, fainting spells that occur without medical explanation. These weren't ordinary fainting spells caused by heat, hunger, or fatigue. They were episodes that came out of nowhere, at home, at work, or even during quiet moments, leaving doctors and family members without answers. He explained it simply: when the body collapses for no clear reason, it needs to be examined more carefully. These people went to the hospital, had examinations, repeated tests, and everything came back normal. The heart was fine, the brain was fine, the blood was fine. Even so, the fainting spells kept returning. For Padre Pio, the key point was that the repetition without cause was the problem. An isolated fainting spell can happen to anyone, but when it recurs, always in the same way, without a natural explanation, something beyond the physical body needs to be investigated. Padre Pio didn't rule out medicine. On the contrary, he always advocated that people see doctors first. Only then, when nothing explained it, did he begin to consider the spiritual aspect. He realized that, in many cases, the fainting spells were linked to specific moments. Before praying, after entering a church, or when the person tried to draw closer to God. It wasn't a coincidence. It was as if something was trying to prevent that step. Padre Pio taught that fear is of no help. What helps is understanding. He said that God doesn't knock anyone down to scare them, and that what comes from God never destroys the body. When fainting spells happened repeatedly without reason, he saw it as a sign, request for attention, not as a sentence. The lesson he left behind is easy to understand. The body doesn't fall repeatedly without reason. If everything has been investigated and nothing explains it, it's time to look more deeply, without panic, without exaggeration, but with discernment. For Padre Pio, observing calmly was always the first step towards liberation. Many people who sought out Padre Pio arrived tired, frustrated, and even discouraged. Not because they hadn't sought help, but precisely because they sought help everywhere possible. Doctors, exams, specialists, medications, therapies, and in the end, no concrete answers. Everything seemed normal on paper, but the person's life remained chaotic inside. Padre Pio knew that this path without answers spoke volumes. He explained it simply: medicine is essential and should always be sought first. God also works through doctors. But when someone goes to several professionals, undergoes all possible tests, and no one can find the cause, this cannot simply be ignored. it doesn't automatically mean it's spiritual, but it does mean something is out of the ordinary. Padre Pio realized that in these cases, the person began to doubt themselves. Some thought they were inventing symptoms, others thought they were going crazy. He welcomed these people calmly and said something that even a child understands. If you feel it, then it's real. It may not have a name yet, but it's real. He also noticed a curious pattern. The more a person tried to organize themselves spiritually, the more the symptoms seemed to confuse everything. The lack of diagnosis increased the anguish, and the anguish increased the suffering. For Padre Pio, this was a sign that the problem was not only in the body or the mind, but he warned firmly, don't skip steps, never abandon medical treatment. Spiritual discernment begins when everything human has already been taken care of. Only then did he begin to observe what did not follow any natural logic. The great lesson from this point is clear. When all the natural doors have been opened and none have explained what is happening, perhaps it is time to look more deeply, not with fear, not with haste, but with truth. Padre Pio taught that the absence of answers is also an answer. It merely points to where we are not yet looking. Father Pio heard many stories that left people confused and frightened, seeing shadows, strange lights, passing shadows, hearing unexplained noises. For many people, this was already proof of something supernatural. But Padre Pio taught that discernment begins precisely when not everything should be believed immediately. Not everything that seems spiritual actually comes from the spiritual world. He explained it simply. The human mind is powerful, and in moments of fear, fatigue, or suffering can create images and sounds. Therefore, he never accepted these experiences alone as proof of a demonic attack. What truly mattered was the context. Did it happen only once or repeatedly? Did it always occur at the same times? Did it happen during prayer, mass, or contact with sacred objects? Father Pio said that when these visions or sounds appear repeatedly, without natural cause, and always linked to spiritual situations, then they deserve attention, not to generate panic, but to understand what is behind them. He warned that evil likes to confuse, to impress, to distract. Therefore, striking phenomena were never the main focus. He also taught something very important. What comes from God brings clarity, not confusion. If an experience distances a person from faith, leaving them with constant fear, agitation, or spiritual pride, that is already a warning sign. Padre Pio observed whether the person became more humble, closer to prayer and truth, or whether they were merely frightened and confused. For him, seeing or hearing something strange wasn't the most important thing. What mattered most was its effect on the person's life. If it led to good, peace, and trust in God, it was dealt with calmly. If it led to fear, disorder, and a departure from faith, it needed to be carefully discerned. The lesson he left behind is easy, even for a child to understand. Not everything that scares you is true, and not everything that is true makes noise. Discernment comes from repetition, from context, and from the fruit that it produces in the heart. Padre Pio also paid close attention to something that confused and frightened those who experienced it. Physical sensations that arose out of nowhere. People reported feeling hands tightening around their neck, sudden chest pains, stabbing pains throughout their body, weight on their shoulders, or a strong tightness in their heart, even when alone, in silence, and without any apparent physical reason. He explained it in a simple way. The body doesn't create repeated sensations without reason. A passing pain can happen to anyone, but when the sensation always appears in the same way, in the same place on the body, and at similar times, it ceases to be normal. For Padre Pio, the repetition was once again the warning sign. The most curious thing is that these sensations often arose when the person tried to pray, forgive someone, or draw closer to God. It wasn't during fun or distraction, but precisely when something good was about to happen. Padre Pio said that this was no coincidence. It was as if something wanted to disturb, distract, or even frighten to prevent that spiritual step. But he also taught not to panic. Not all pain is spiritual, nor is every tightness in the chest a sign of something spiritually wrong. Therefore, he always advised people to take care of their bodies first, seek medical help, and rule out natural causes. Discernment is never separate from prudence. When everything had already been investigated and the sensations remained unexplained, Padre Pio began to observe more closely. He realized that these pains were not meant to destroy the body, but to generate fear and confusion. And God, according to him, does not act in this way. God corrects with peace, not with terror. The lesson from this point is very clear and easy to understand. The body can be used as a sign, but never as a sentence. Unexplained sensations are not a reason for despair, but for calm observation and unwavering faith. Padre Pio taught that when something tries to frighten us, clarity and trust in God are always the best path. Father Pio paid close attention when someone began to show extraordinary skills, like knowing things you've never learned or noticing details about the lives of complete strangers. For many, this seemed like a special gift, but Padre Pio taught that not everything that impresses comes from God, and that care made all the difference. He explained it simply. God doesn't give gifts to confuse or show off anyone. What comes from God builds, brings people closer, fosters humility and peace. When someone started guessing illnesses, secrets, or hidden events without ever having had contact with them, Padre Pio wasn't impressed. On the contrary, he observed with even more attention. Excessive brilliance almost always hid something. Father Pio asked a key question. Does this bring a person closer to God, or does it make them feel superior to others? If a person began to think of themselves as too special, too chosen, too different, that was already a serious warning sign. He said that evil likes to inflate the ego, because pride is a silent and dangerous door. Another important point, these perceptions usually arose along with other signs, such as discomfort during prayer, constant fear, or inner confusion. They never came alone. Padre Pio knew that when something is true, it doesn't need to be shown off. But what is false makes noise, draws attention, and tries to impress. He also taught that true spiritual gifts never take away a person's freedom. They don't dominate, they don't force, they don't cause panic. When someone said, "This happens without me wanting it and it scares me," he realized that this needed to be carefully discerned. The main lesson from this point is easy even for a child to understand. Not everything that seems like power is a gift. What comes from God brings peace and humility. What comes to confuse, frighten, or inflate pride needs to be observed calmly. Padre Pio taught that the greatest sign of God is not knowing hidden things, but loving, trusting, and remaining in the truth. Padre Pio always said that there is a simple question that changes everything. When did this start? For him, this detail was so important that it came before any deeper prayer. While many focused only on what the person was feeling at the moment, he wanted to understand the exact moment when everything changed, because almost nothing starts without a reason. He explained it very simply. Life is like a line. If something strange appears at a specific point on that line, we need to look at what happened there. Padre Pio observed that, in many cases, the symptoms did not appear gradually, but after a significant event before, that the person lived normally. Afterwards, everything changed. Therefore, he asked calmly and attentively, was it after a wedding, a separation, a great loss, a sudden life change, a deep family feud? These questions weren't out of curiosity, they were keys. Often in responding, the person themselves would begin to notice connections they had never seen before. Father Pio taught that evil likes to act in secret during moments of weakness, not when everything is going well, but when the heart is wounded, confused, or vulnerable, and identifying the onset of symptoms helped to understand how could something have entered? He also warned that this beginning didn't always come with something frightening. Sometimes it was something seemingly normal, but accompanied by rejection, envy, hatred, or ill intentions from other people. Therefore, he never ignored the emotional and spiritual context of that moment. The lesson he left behind is simple. Even a child understands it. To fix something, we need to know when it broke. Ignoring the beginning is like trying to heal a wound without knowing where it came from. Padre Pio knew that when the beginning is revealed, the path to liberation becomes much clearer. Padre Pio taught that not every attack begins with something frightening, but it almost always starts after a defining moment in life. He realized that many spiritual symptoms arose soon after events that deeply affected the heart. Therefore, he paid close attention to events that, at first glance, seemed like just normal phases of life. Marriages, separations, deaths in the family, inheritance disputes, house moves, old conflicts resurfacing. All of this frequently appeared in the stories he heard. Padre Pio explained it simply. When life undergoes a major change, the heart becomes more sensitive. And where there is fragility, something may try to take advantage. He observed that in many cases these events were accompanied by opposition, rejection, or envy, someone who didn't accept the marriage, a family member who wished ill, a fight that ended without forgiveness. Padre Pio didn't say that every conflict generates a spiritual attack, but he taught that strong negative feelings can create openings when they are not healed. The most important thing is that these events almost always coincided with the onset of symptoms. Before that, the person lived well. Afterwards, the discomfort, the fears, the inner turmoil began. For Padre Pio, this was no coincidence. It was a sign that something needed to be looked at more closely. He also warned that evil likes to act silently. It doesn't appear with noise, but infiltrates little by little, taking advantage of moments of emotional pain. That's why Padre Pio always advised people to remember exactly what was happening in life during that period. The lesson from this point is very easy to understand. Important moments in life require spiritual protection, not with fear, but with prayer, forgiveness, and vigilance. Padre Pio taught that when these events are surrendered to God, no breach remains open, and what seemed confusing begins to become clear. Padre Pio said that the most revealing moment was not when the person told their story, but when the prayer hit exactly the right spot. He explained that there are words that pass through the mind and words that reach the root. And when the root is touched, something always reacts. Not by human force, but because the truth disturbs what is hidden. Therefore, before resorting to anything extreme, Padre Pio would turn to simple and direct prayer. It was centered on Jesus. It wasn't spectacle, it wasn't shouting, it wasn't fear, it was faith. He attentively observed what happened when certain themes were mentioned: the name of Jesus, forgiveness, specific events in the person's life, important dates, old wounds. Sometimes the reaction came immediately, other times it came later. But when it did, it confirmed that something had been achieved. He taught that God doesn't force anyone. True prayer doesn't invade, she reveals. And when something manifests itself in prayer, this is not a reason for panic, but for clarity. For Padre Pio, this was the definitive sign that it was not merely imagination or emotion, but something that needed liberation. The most curious thing is that he also spoke of the attacks he suffered. Before major missions, important celebrations, or moments of intense preaching, strange problems would arise, objects would break, noises would appear, confusion would arise for no reason. He called this vexations, external attacks that don't control the person but try to hinder the good that is being done. And here comes the most beautiful lesson of all. Padre Pio smiled at this and said something simple: when evil is angered, it is because good is advancing. He viewed these attacks not as defeat, but as confirmation that he was on the right track. The final message is clear and easy to understand. Light always disturbs darkness. Padre Pio's method was not fear, but discernment. It was not curiosity, but love for the truth. He taught that the closer we get to God, the more everything becomes clear, and nothing false can remain hidden. If this content helped you better understand spiritual discernment, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. Now tell me in the comments, have you ever experienced something that only started to make sense after hearing this explanation?
Hear the true prophetic message.